Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your hosts, V.
And Sean, aka Lord Spew, we talk shop with other creatives in animation and comics about things like finding your artistic path or the process of making art while we doodle on Magma.
We asked people on our social medias if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts. If you haven't yet, check out our Patreon and subscribe to our channel.
Today we have with us Musa Brooker. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being our guest. Very exciting pre-release of Lil Kev.
Oh no, Lil Kev is out.
It's out.
It's
Everybody
out.
go watch
Yeah,
it. Where can we watch it?
absolutely. BET Plus. It's the first episode is actually streaming live now on YouTube, so you can check that out on YouTube. And the rest of the series, all episodes are now streaming on BET Plus. If you want to check it out for free, you can log on. They have a week-long free trial. So check that out. And then hopefully you'll stay and watch the rest of the show or other shows on BET Plus. That's probably the whole point of having it on BET Plus. But yeah, please. It's all episodes are now streaming.
If you were to pitch Lil Kev to our audience, they're coming in completely blank. Maybe how would you pitch it? What's your hook? What's the pitch for the show?
Sure. So it's based on the life of actor and comedian, superstar comedian Kevin Hart.
Hold on, I'm googling this guy. What?
I don't know
Who's
if you've
guy?
heard of him. And it's basically him as a young kid growing up in North Philadelphia in the '90s, and he's a teenager, yeah, a preteen, I guess, and no, I guess he's a teenager, and it's his story how he. North Philadelphia is a rough and tumble neighborhood, and it still is, and it certainly was in the '90s, and it was the era of crack epidemic and lots of crazy stuff going on. So it's sort of the story of how the Lil Kev that we see in the show became the big Kev that we know in real life. How his sort of
Nice.
undying optimism, despite his surroundings, contributed to how he became the man he is today. So it's all about him and his family and friends growing up.
Nice. That sounds awesome. As much as I want to dive right into Little Kev, I would love to get a little background on you. I know a little bit, at least a portion of your background, because we went to the same school, not at the same time, but we went to the same school, and I met you at an alumni meetup here in California. What was it like going from college to kind of getting your first animation jobs? How was that journey for you?
It was relatively painless, actually, which is good. At least at the time, it felt that way. I went to University of the Arts. I know that the people listening to the podcast can't see it, but for the honor of the occasion,
Oh, there
I
we
wore
go.
my
Wow!
University of the Arts sweatshirt.
So cool.
um,
R.I.P.
yeah, kind of crazy. But yeah, I was an animation major. It's all I've ever wanted to do since I was 5 years old was work in cartoons and animation. And I, applied to and went to University of the Arts and had they had career day like they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a couple of interviews I was really excited about. And then there's one that like it just didn't seem to go well. I don't know, it seemed like they were weird and I felt weird in the interview. And then of course they're the people that offered me my first job.
Wait, so maybe it's kind of maybe it's one of those like bullying you, like, but I have a crush on you relationships, like.
It's not like they weren't mean or anything like that. They were we weren't, it didn't feel like we were in the same groove. I don't know how you guys experience interviews, but it feels like I can kind of I can kind of tell when it's going okay. And it didn't seem like it was just awkward and long
Hmm.
pauses. But yeah, so I got a job right out of school. Like I started like a month or two after school, working on CD-ROM games,
Oh,
which dates me a little bit. But yeah, I was working on CD-ROM edutainment games for kids.
dude,
Cool.
those were like they were like all the rage in the 90s. I remember I played so many of these, so many
I
like
still
edutainment
love point
games.
and click
Wow,
games to this
dude, so
day.
good.
Yeah.
That's great.
I
That's
feel
great.
like those are like unsung heroes, like the edutainment games, you know, like
Did you have
For
a
keeping.
sure.
favorite?
Game that I worked on, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was a small software company, and while I was there, it was in Delaware. I was from Philly, living in Philly, so I'd commute to Delaware. I didn't even have a license at the time, so I would have to get a ride from a coworker or take the train and bus there. But gosh, I don't even remember the things that we worked on. The company got bought out or
Yeah.
sold when I was working there, and then there were a bunch of layoffs. And I don't even think the game that I worked on ever came out, but I could be wrong. I don't know. They were bought out by Activision, or they were bought out by another company called Experts. I mean, no one cares about this, but they were bought out by a company called Expert, and then Expert was bought out by Activision a couple of years later. So
Wait,
I
I
go
think
ahead.
it's like it's relevant though because I feel like the industry right now is so crazy and I feel like hearing that kind of like mergers, companies being bought out, all that's always happened, that will always happen. So it's kind of like funny to think about it that way.
For sure. Yeah, it felt very strange. I had somehow managed to get them to give me some stock options when I started. It
You
was
still
like,
have them?
I think I do, but they're so, they've been, because the company's been bought out by so many different other things. So it's like I've got one piece of stock somewhere that started off with thousands of, stock options, and it's now like one.
you're like part owner of Fortnite and you don't even
Yeah,
realize it. Like
exactly.
like we came from
Exactly.
crazy big company.
Exactly.
So how did you not escape from how did you transition from games to was it TV next? Was it movie? Was it films? What were you working on after that?
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of layoffs, and I got let go. That's how I transitioned. Um, and I think the next job, I had a little bit of time between jobs, and the next thing I started working for a small CG startup in Philly,
Hmm.
and was working there, and it wasn't. It, there were a lot of great people there that I've actually recently reconnected with, who were just great, but it wasn't the most pleasant experience, to be honest. And
Gotcha.
I was hungry for something else, and so I started applying to places, and I applied to MTV Animation, which at the time was the largest. It was the largest animation company on the East Coast, and applied there with my portfolio I'd been working on, and I got sort of a test from them. I took the test, and then I wasn't offered a job, but apparently the people that were offered a job didn't work out, and so a few weeks later I was offered a job, and was offered like a 2 week test as a layout artist on Daria.
Very
Not a
cool.
test, but hired for 2 weeks, sort of as a fill-in, like a trial period, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, so I was commuting up to New York from Philly, and it seemed to work out. They kept offering me more weeks and more weeks, and then finally they said, "Why don't you just stay on for the rest of the season?" And that was my first real kind of industry job. I was doing layout on Daria.
Yeah, they say that you don't have to be the best animator, you just have to be the one left over after they're full from fire. The bear that was chasing the studio was had eaten the other fired the other person, and
Right.
then you're left over. That's what they say.
Exactly. I was the
It's
leftover.
catchy. It rolls off the tongue.
Yeah. Yeah, I was leftover, but it got my, sort of got my foot in the door, and then I was kind of off to the races from that.
I read you also did stop mo. Is that right?
Yes, I spent most of my career at this point, probably two-thirds of my career at this point, doing stop motion. I It was actually at MTV, so I was on Daria. I was a layout artist on Daria. I
Oh, word.
anticipate I anticipated that they wouldn't bring me back for the next season. It was rough. It was like a little bit of trial by fire. Um,
You kept doing stop motion for it. They were like, "We need
we
drawn
don't,
pictures."
yes. But what about this puppet, this Jane puppet? No. And I had taken a class at University of the Arts that was a stop motion class. And so I had all this stop motion work, and they were hiring for a new show. They had just done like a halftime special, and it had been greenlit as a show, and it was stop motion. They were doing it right at the studio. And so I showed my work from that class to the producers and creator of the show, and got hired as an assistant animator on Celebrity Death. And
That's so sick.
Mhm.
yeah, it was good. It was a great, you know, experience in that I met so many people that I continue to be friends with, and I learned so much. And I didn't actually enjoy doing layout so much. We were doing a lot of Xeroxing of model sheets. It wasn't a lot of drawing.
Gotcha.
Um,
Oh,
and
that's right.
yeah,
Because you were doing it all on paper at the
it
time.
was all on paper. Yeah,
Oh.
totally pre-digital.
So you were,
Um,
yeah, that because I feel like I've only heard extremely recently of layout sort of kind of coming back in some productions, but the experience of our past guests, Derek Malik Johnson, talks about it a little bit in his episode for our listeners. Check out Derek's episode. But yeah, it sounds like it's a little bit easier digitally than it would be traditionally with the Xerox and all that.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. I can't. I mean, I can't even. The job would have been a totally different experience had we had digital tools at the time. We wouldn't have had to Xerox. We were literally Xeroxing and cutting things out. We did. Obviously, we did some drawing, but it was a mixture of both. But I wasn't animating, and
Mm.
that's kind of what I wanted to do more than anything. And so, what was great about Deathmatch is that we were actually animating in house at MTV. So I was excited to transition over to that.
I
Mhm.
mean,
And
those fights are so fun. Can you remember a specific one that you had maybe fun doing or presented like a challenge or something?
I remember a couple. I remember we did Sarah Michelle Gellar versus Nev Campbell, I think.
Oh my
And
Yes,
God,
dude.
that's funny.
yeah, and I remember, I learned so much from other animators. I was hired as an assistant, but for some reason they had grouped. We were shooting in like offices and closets on the MTV animation floor on Broadway, and they hadn't done anything like that before. So they had a directing animator and an assistant animator in each shoot room, we called them. And I was hired as an assistant animator, which basically meant you would click frames for the directing animator.
Oh
But for,
yeah.
for whatever reason, there was an odd number of assistants. And so instead of being an assistant in another directing animator's room, I got coupled with another assistant. So we both got to animate instead of clicking
Yes.
game. And so I learned so much in that like little bit of time. And then they changed the format of the organization of the show, so everybody was animating and wasn't assistant and directing
That's
animators.
cool.
But I learned so much, and I kind of became an animator by default because of the weird number of people that they had hired. And so just got the chance to animate every day and learn so much in that time when you're anything, if you're doing anything, but especially if you're animating for 8-10 hours a day, you're going to get better. And that's kind of what happened.
That's really cool. What was it like going from I cannot wait to animate to going to animating all the time? Did you ever kind of like sometimes think it was like monkey paw type of wish where you ever like, it's too much now?
Oh
Careful
yeah,
what you
for
wish for.
sure. All the time. Yeah, absolutely. It was intimidating. There's so many amazing, talented people that I met on the show that had way more experience than me. And so it was fun to learn so much by seeing, we would watch each other's shots. And so I learned
Mm,
so much from the other animators, but it was tough. It was long days, and
mm,
hard stuff. There's so much action in the show, and action is harder to animate. It's harder to
mm.
it takes more time, more concentration. Speaking of
It's
concentration, I should I should jump in and do some drawing.
action shows it's funny because there are these shows that everybody wants to work on. I don't think there's a single person in the industry who hasn't thought to themselves at some point, "Oh man, I wish I could do some really cool shots." But then you go onto it and
They're
then you're
so
like,
hard.
there's it's so hard
Ooh.
and I feel like I don't know if you've experienced that on that show, but I feel like action shows, they tend to, because they have like quote unquote prestige or like that kind of like aura, they also tend to kind of like work people harder because they're like, oh, there's so many people who are excited to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it was hard for sure. I mean it was fun because it was such a cartoony show, so it's so pushed. So it wasn't, realistic action necessarily.
Mhm.
But it was hard. It was intimidating and very challenging. But another episode that I remember really well was I think it was Busta Rhymes versus Shakespeare, and that
Oh
Whoa.
and
my
that was a
god.
fun one because
That's so
Busta
sick.
Rhymes he's such a character, especially at the time he was so much younger and very like so much energy, and so we were trying to translate that into the animated version, so that was really fun.
Man.
Speaking of
Man.
intimidating, I'm intimidated by your drawing. I love these drawings; they're so great.
It's like it's funny because like Sean went hyper realistic and I'm just like drawing cartoons.
I love it. I love it.
Uh,
Were you
well,
gonna
I was gonna ask, have you, I mean, obviously, looking at your IMDb, you've worked on a lot of things, and I'm curious if you've ever had an interesting entry point into a job or a funny getting a job story off the top.
I don't know if this got me the job, but I have an unusual name, at least in the States, and I always have a phonetic spelling of my name on my resume
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. And I remember the producer that hired me on at MTV said that she thought that was really fun and cute, and so that's part of why she gave me the job.
Your name is
so
cute. Here's the
well,
job.
well,
That's
well,
dope.
the idea that it was like there was a phonetic, explanation of it. So,
So,
Yeah.
advice for everybody listening, go to City Hall right now, get your name changed.
To something cute, preferably.
absolutely. But yeah, I've been very lucky in my career and done a lot of different styles of animation. One of the things I always loved was the variety of techniques and styles of animation. I 2D was probably my first love, but I really got to know about experimental animation in college and abstract animation and stop motion and CG and 2D. And I just kind of loved all of it. And so I've been very fortunate that I've been able to work in 2D and work in stop motion and work in CG as well. And there, a lot of the jobs that I've gotten have been right place, right time. Met somebody years ago that didn't have a project for me then, but then had a project for me 10, 15 years later. Um, the first project that I ever directed, solo directed, I guess, I was hired by a producer who I had interned for about 10 years earlier. And she remembered that I did stop
Whoa.
motion.
That is so
And
cool.
You never
yeah,
know, dude.
you
Yeah.
never know. Yeah, and even on Lil Kev, she recommended me on Lil Kev, and then the producer was someone I had worked with 20 years ago.
Oh wow, yeah.
And it just, right place, right time, making
Yeah.
connections. I've been very fortunate.
I that's amazing because I was gonna ask you, how does it how in your career, how did you kind of move up? Was it like something that you did intentionally? Was it something that you had to network for, or did it kind of just happen naturally?
It did not happen naturally. That is 100% for sure. I, for maybe the first half of my career, I just thought, I would be the best animator that I could be,
Hmm.
and or the best artist that I could be, and people would recognize that and give me opportunities because of it.
So many of us think that way, so it's good that you're
Absolutely,
talking about it.
absolutely. I mean, that's I guess that's what we were taught, I suppose. I don't know, but and obviously it's important to be the best you can be, and
Yes.
the best whatever it is that you can be. But I just wasn't, I got opportunities as an animator, but I always knew that I wanted to have more creative control is not the right word, but
Hmm.
input
Sway, input,
to,
yeah.
to projects. And I, even in school, I think I didn't really know what a director was or what exactly what they did, but I knew they were sort of in charge of things creatively, and so I I wanted to do that, but I didn't know how to do it. I just thought that I could do the best job that I
Hmm.
was doing, and then people would see me and recognize me and say, "Hey, do you want to do this other important thing over here?"
Hmm.
And I don't know why my voice got so high there, but it just was not what happened, and I didn't start getting opportunities to move up until I told people, "Hey, I want to move up." I want to
Hmm.
do more than what I'm doing right now. And I think that's a really great lesson for anyone starting out, or anyone, even if you're not starting out, if you're mid career and you want to do something else, you want to grow, obviously, you want to push yourself and challenge yourself, but make sure you let people know, I want to be a writer, or I want to be a director, or I want to be, in charge of visual effects, or whatever it is. It might not happen right away, but at least you're putting it out there in the universe, and people will hear, and hopefully, if you are also good enough and you also are nice enough and play well with others, then people will give you those opportunities, because that's how it happened for me. It didn't happen until I sort of voiced it and let people know.
How long
So
into
that's the
your
secret.
it's a secret.
That's the secret. Just saying, well, I want that.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
How long into your career, like when in your career did you feel one that you wanted to do mo more, and two that you felt like comfortable or like had the confidence to ask, I guess.
I think I kind of, after a few years of animating, I guess I always knew that I wanted to do a little bit more, but never felt like I was ready. Never
Mm.
felt like I that I was worthy, I guess, in some weird way. Sorry, what was the question again?
I
My
guess that's kind
mind.
of like how far into your career, because I feel like sometimes,
Oh,
like
right,
for
right, right.
example, for me, I would say probably I kind of am like starting out a little bit wanted to bite more than I could chew because it was like, yeah, I have 5 years experience, I can do like all these things, and maybe like looking back I'm like, maybe that's too early when and you like ask for things and people around you are like, what are you talking about but you
Sure.
specifically for your career, like when was the moment when you like started to ask for these opportunities, and also when did you start feeling worthy like you just said.
Yeah, it was really midway through my career. I'd animated for multiple years, and was sort of craving, more direct input into the creative process of projects. It's a wonderful skill and it's a wonderful thing, and you are always part of that process when you're animating on something. But I just felt like I wanted to get a little bit more, was feeling a little bit like, okay, not that I'm the best animator in the world, but I'd learned a lot. I felt like I was progressing, but I always had ideas. And so I'd say, maybe even though I always knew, I didn't start asking those questions and letting people know until I want to say 10 or 15 years in, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, if my time is like a puzzle box right now, but I think it was about 10 years in, I realized, okay, maybe I want to try something. And I actually that's when I went back to school.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, I'd worked for about 10 years and then I went to grad school at
Mm.
CalArts.
Oh,
In part
cool.
because I wanted time to work on my own stuff and to develop more skills. CG had become much more prominent at that point, and I thought, oh, let me learn more. I had learned some of it in undergrad, but I wanted to dig in a little bit deeper, and I also knew that I wanted to teach with the skills and experience that I had. I had so many great teachers myself, but I also wanted to share some of the things that I learned along the way that weren't taught in school necessarily.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, so ended up going to CalArts, and that definitely helped in terms of me feeling like, okay, I can do this. I'm learning more things, um, making some great connections, um, and seeking out the opportunities in a way that I hadn't before.
Hmm.
Mm,
No, it's smart. And
mhm.
I think that it's very telling that you stayed in student mode. You weren't like, I've learned everything and I'm an expert and I can stop learning. I think that it just speaks to
Mhm.
a humbleness and a willing to learn throughout your career, and it's also probably one of the things that's made you how, like, basically you're at your level because you stayed a student in some ways, it sounds like.
I think that's so important. I mean, I think, certainly I had this thought. I think a lot of people do, that school is sort of the end of your learning.
Mhm.
And I think it's so important to continue to push yourself, to grow,
Hmm.
to learn things, because you should never stop learning. That's the only way that you're going to get better, is if you continue to push yourself and grow. And
Mhm.
I've tried to do that, with different skills and different jobs. There's always something to learn new on a job. And yeah, I think that's what's allowed me to try new different things and different mediums and different projects. Yeah.
Hmm. So school round two, what do you feel like your biggest takeaway coming from that it was compared to school round one?
I think when it's a little counterintuitive, but I think one of the things that, I don't know what I'm drawing, by the way, it's like generic Odie, kind of. I was sort of inspired by it's like, um, but not quite Odie. Anyway,
That's okay. Be as little like Odie as you want to.
I think I was a little bit, looking back now, I was a little bit arrogant when I went back to school, because like,
Okay.
I've worked in the industry. I know I don't need these, basic classes. And the thing that I wish that I had sort of let go of my ego more and
Yeah.
just just dove, is that the best, it's just dove in
Sure.
to um learning and being there. And I got there, but it took me a little while, and there was some sort of
Sure.
wheel spinning. But I think, the thing that I was more prepared to I was thinking more about the future when I was in grad school than I was in undergrad, I think. and understood the importance of the connections of the people that I was
Mm.
meeting there. It's one of the things that I always share with my students is learn from the people that are there, make those connections. You'll be working with some of these people maybe for the rest of your life. I certainly
Mhm.
still work with people that I met at University of the Arts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and treasure those moments, make those connections. I think
Mhm.
that was the biggest thing that I learned, and I just tried to do lots of different things and soak up the environment and the people there and the teachers that were. Yeah, it was a great experience. I don't know if that answered your question.
I no, I how do you advise people make, you say connections, but ultimately it's kind of, you're making friends.
For sure.
What's, do you have any advice for making a new animation friend?
I think be humble, be yourself. I think the industry is full of the industry or just school is full of people that are hungry and interested and want to learn and try new things. And don't be afraid to just introduce yourself to
Mm-hmm.
somebody. I think this industry is full of some really great people, and nobody nobody that I know of really does this to make money. They do it because
Mhm.
they love it, and um, it's so collaborative. It's such a collaborative medium, and um, the more that you can find people that you want to collaborate with, the easier it will be as you make your way. You want to have people on your side. You want to have people that can feed off of your ideas, and then you can feed off of theirs. So I think it's just don't be afraid. I think that's the biggest advice is
Mm-hmm.
like just meet people. Don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated. To introduce yourself or say that you enjoy someone's work. Everybody likes to hear that. That
Yeah, it's true.
like, oh, I like your work, or I really admired this drawing that you did, or that sequence that you animated, or that character design was really wonderful. I think that's a great. I guess you're buttering them up, but it's a great entryway. Everybody loves to do that, and so be honest. But yeah, I think that's a good way in.
Yeah.
Mhm. After CalArts, do you feel like that really jumpstart your career, or like that you were able to kind of like jump to these positions that you had always kind of thought about, or did it take an extra couple of years to kind of
Oh
like?
no, it definitely took an extra couple of years after that. It was, yeah, no, it was I again I was really fortunate, right place, right time. Right after school, I was able to jump right back. I'd mostly been doing stop motion animation before school, and I was able to jump back in. I was a day player on the first season of Robot Chicken while I was still in school. So if they
Mm.
needed a
Huh.
substitute animator for a day or someone was sick, they would call me up and say, "Hey, can you animate for a couple days here or there?" And I actually had built my class schedule around the idea that I knew I needed to freelance when I was in school. So
That's smart. Yeah, I was gonna ask you if
Yeah.
you were working while in school. Yeah.
it was for sure, yeah. I had to the first year, and then I actually got a fellowship after
Oof.
the first year, and so I didn't have to work, which was great. But I was still I was able to. It was kind of complicated because of the fellowship I had to always ask permission to work if I got a freelance opportunity. I had to ask them
Mm-hmm.
because they were giving me a stipend and they were paying for school, and
Hmm.
so I had to ask if it was okay if I could work on this really cool project and and more often than not they gave me permission to do that.
Did they ever
But
say no? Were they ever like, not this one?
no, they never said no, but there were a couple times when I didn't ask and I wasn't paid in money. But I was there was a project that it was actually in Portland and I was living in LA, and so I, I wasn't paid like in money, but I got paid in food. I got paid in a place to stay, and they would fly me up to Portland
Wow.
to work on this stuff. And so it's a little bit weird that I don't necessarily encourage you not getting paid in money for
Yeah.
projects, but it was a it was a great opportunity in that I got to work on a cool project. they paid for every meal, and they put me up, and I got a stipend every day. So it
Yeah.
was it was a win-win. I think I know that there's always a lot of worry about people being taken advantage of, but I was also taking advantage of them and the opportunities. So it,
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah,
was it was kind of a win-win.
this just adds another dimension of contracts that students need to learn, because you can get paid in money, you can get paid in like granola bars. There's all these different currencies that exist
Pizza
in the
parties.
U.S. for, yeah, pizza parties,
Well,
exposure. There's
you
all
know,
kinds.
I actually, I do feel like there is, when you're working, obviously the default and what might be preferred is being paid with money. But I know something somebody shared with me midway through my career has really stuck with me, and I honestly can't remember who it is, but you kind of take a job for one of the three R's: real, revenue, or relationship. And
Real.
sometimes you're not always paid in hard currency, or you're not paid as much as you probably deserve, but you're building a relationship that will pay off later. That is 100% been the case in my career. If you can afford to do those jobs, right? And sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
can't. You got to pay your bills, and so you got to take the job that's only about revenue, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there are times when I haven't been paid the greatest, but I knew it was going to be a cool project, and I knew it would be a highlight on my reel, and so I took it anyway. Not for nothing, but one of those three things, it's another way of getting paid, and it's not quite the same as exposure. That's sort of like, the ridiculous term that people use when they're kind of trying to take advantage of you.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
think
yeah,
if you can reframe it or think of it as real revenue or relationship, those are ways of getting paid. And um,
Mm-hmm.
I know I've continued to do that throughout my career, and it's I feel like I've done okay by that.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's
But
really
if
important
you can.
to pick it's true, like it's something I actually have once actively pursued a job that when I on paper was a job that I was like, kind of whatever. But then I was like, oh, I don't know the circle at all, the circle of people that are on this project. And
Mm,
that is a great opportunity to extend my
yeah.
network. And I was
mhm.
like, and I know I'm gonna learn skills that I don't have yet. So I was like, even though the project it's good, but I am not the most enthralled or whatever. I was like, I'll definitely try to put my best foot forward and really try to like do well on this job because I know like it opens up a whole and it's actually interesting to also think that I recently in the current state of things, it's that specific network that has offered the most opportunities because it was like
Ooh.
you know what I mean? Like it's like
Hmm.
a different style that is more in vogue right now than like 5 years ago. There was like more like cartoony stuff. So I think the relationship is aspect of a job is like so important. It's something that I didn't used to do before, like looking at people on like LinkedIn and like their past projects and stuff. And now I'm like trying to do my homework better before taking an interview and all that stuff.
I've It's so funny because I feel like, not to sort of be a not to generalize about the current generation or the younger generation, but
Mm,
I have found, and it's not just the younger generation, it's a lot of folks, but when I'm sort of meeting people and working with people, I'll Google them in a second. I want to know who this person is, what they've done, how can I connect with them,
mm,
what can I learn from them,
mhm.
and I find that there's a lot of folks that don't do that. I found in teaching, I actually have a really funny story of a student who I adore. Um, I've been teaching for 15 years at USC, so it's been a minute now. um,
Mhm.
and so many great students over the course of the time. And one of the things that I do in the very first class is, I introduce myself, and I ask them in a roundtable to introduce each other. their major, do they have, I teach stop motion. So I asked them, favorite stop motion projects or filmmakers, and what do you want to get out of the class?
Mm.
So one time we were going around, and the student, Shide, she said, "Oh, I'm really into toys and dolls, and there's this Bratz stop motion Bratz web series that I love, and it's really great." And I thought she was BSing me. I thought she was just like brown nosing, because I had actually directed that
No
that
way!
Bratz stop motion series,
Oh, what?
But
and it was
you would be surprised, like these doll shows, Bratz, Monster High, they're extremely popular. Like they have
for
the fan
sure.
bases are like really like they really deeply connect with these brands.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just, that had never happened in all the years that I've been teaching, and it
That's
hasn't
so
happened
funny.
since. But it was so funny that she had mentioned that, and I was giving her a hard time, because I thought for sure she's just, brown nosing right now. There's no way that, come on, there's no way that
That's
that's one of
hilarious.
your favorite things. But it was, and I got, I got to know her in class, and afterwards we started her and a bunch of other students, we started a stop motion club at USC, and so
Mm.
I got to know her, better over the years. And she absolutely was telling the truth, and she's totally into dolls. But it was just funny because, for me, had she Googled me, she would have known that.
That's hilarious. Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's a great story. But yeah, I feel like even people I just meet, if I'm on a meeting and I don't recognize someone in the meeting, I'll Google them in a second, just so that I know who they are. How can I connect with this person? What can I
Mm.
learn from them in their journey that can help me out? So
Hmm.
I recommend it. Don't be obsessive about it, or stalky about it,
Stalking.
but
yeah.
Where do
Just
you live?
yeah, exactly,
I really
exactly.
googling
like that
them,
bakery that's right in
Yeah,
front of your house.
just
exactly.
googling
None of
him
that.
mid
Yeah.
handshake.
Oh
That's
my
very funny.
God.
I know we don't have you forever.
Yeah,
I wanted to get to we have a few quick questions from our
for sure.
listeners. From Puzzle Glum, we have. Do you have any tips for learning stop motion animation specifically? If somebody's like starting out, and do you have any quick tips?
That is a good question. I would say almost with anything, the best thing to do is just do it, because you'll
Mhm.
learn so much by doing. Um, I think a lot of the same, animation is animation, and so many of the same principles that apply to 2D or CG in terms of the animation process apply to stop motion. I think what's different about stop motion, one of the things is that it's like a stage play. It all happens at once in that frame, and so you have to plan, but also know, like a stage play, you can improv some things along the way. You can figure things
Mm-hmm.
out if you're. I always encourage my students to plan, 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 but
Mhm.
know that you can deviate from the plan. Um, but it, there's kind of more setup involved in stop motion than other kinds of animation. For 2D, you kind of just need a piece of paper. CG, obviously, need a computer. Um, but the stop motion, you need a place to shoot, and you need a camera, and you need Dragon Frame, and or Stopmo Pro, or one of the other sort of less expensive programs you can get on your phone or whatever. There's so many resources out there. I would definitely pick up the Aardman book, Creating 3D Animation. It's like the stop motion version of The Illusion of Life. um, it's just this sort of amazing resource. There's some other books out there that are great. Um, watch it. Watch as much as you can. Take a look at things frame by frame, and then just dive in. If you can get a quick and easy camera setup, just go for it. Analyze some other animation, and see what it is that's working in that. Take a look at things frame by frame, and just dive in and go for it. Start simple. So often part of what draws people to stop motion is it's tactile, and the detail and the texture of things. But you can start really simple with just, you know, in the same way that in 2D animation, you can start with a bouncing ball. You can start with a little clay ball, try to get the feel of that ball bouncing. You know, observation is such a key element for any animator. And so, you know, when you're out, I always tell my students, if you're out, I love going to Disneyland because it's the perfect people watching place. Everybody goes to Disneyland. There's so many kids, old people, goths, punks, you know, stoners, squares. Everybody goes to Disneyland, and so you can see, you know, different types of people and different groups, and then how they interact with each other, body language, and so that's kind of probably a longer answer than you needed, but
it's just the right answer.
Thank you.
It's just the right length. We have one question from Orc Socks from Patreon. How long does it take for you to adjust between animation styles when you're switching in between projects?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think it takes that. I kind of got a similar question. I was at a panel recently and got a similar question. It does take some time, but it's not that different, you know. It actually, I think it takes longer to adjust between animating on 1s and 2s than it does between stop motion and 2D.
Interesting. Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And you know, I think for me, because I spent so long in stop motion, I am, and even drawing 2D on a Cintiq, there's a tactile nature to it that doesn't exist in the same way in CG animation. And so CG for me is the most challenging because I want to just reach in and grab it, and I can't do that. You know, I can redraw it, you know, with some effort, I can redraw something. In stop motion, I can just push the puppet, but I can't do that in CG. And so that's sort of one of the challenging things for me. But
it's interesting to hear you say that, because when I very first in school started CG, I barely do CG anymore now. I thought I was like, it's gonna be just like stop motion. Not at all.
No, it was definitely not like stop motion. I mean, obviously there are elements that are like it, but it's a very different thing. But so I don't think, you know, I don't think it takes that long. But there's always a little bit of adjustment, but you know, you kind of can get into a groove just like anything else. And you know, it's like riding a bike. If you haven't ridden a bike for a long time, you're a little wobbly, but I feel like, God, I wish we could draw for like another couple hours so that I could get back into the groove of drawing. But you know, you're a little wobbly to start, but then you find your way back, you know, and at least that's been my experience.
Well, I also believe that V has the titular podcast question that we always ask.
The ultimate question that we ask all of our guests. Musa, have you experienced creative block in animating or even supervising directing, and how does it manifest, and how do you solve it or like go about it?
That's a good question. I might be creatively blocked from answering that question.
Work through it. Tell us how you're doing it.
Of course, I've experienced creative block. I think that happens more on the writing side, on the idea side, than the animation side or the directing side. You know, directing, in my experience, is kind of, it's a storytelling, obviously, but it's like problem solving. And so like you're presented with a problem, and problem might not be the right word, but a situation where you've got to figure out the best way to tell this story, the best way to draw this character, the best way to get this emotion across. And so it's very sort of goal oriented. It's very sort of, you know, like, how do I solve this particular puzzle? Whereas, you know, if you're coming up with ideas on the writing side, it's sort of like it's a blank canvas. And that's the most sort of intimidating thing, I think, for me. Starting is always the most intimidating thing, especially when writing. I have a couple writing partners, and it's, you know, the cliche is it's not writing, it's rewriting. And that's so true. Just if you can just get a version out on the page, then the editing can take place and you can really
Mm-hmm.
solve the problems. But if you don't even have anything there, that's when I have trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, I believe in the process, and I have witnessed enough that it just takes time, and sort of the magic of when it really is working is like, oh, I don't need as much time to solve this problem, but there's always time involved. And so, it's kind of about spending the time. It's spending the time to solve the thing, to figure out the prompt. And there've been so many times where it's sort of like, working with my writing partners, you can't solve it. I don't know why. I don't know what the solution is to this. And then you go away and you come back, the next day or the next week or a month later, and it's like it all clicks into place. It just, your brain needs time to process the things and bounce ideas. Half the time when I'm meeting with my writing partners, we're just talking about stupid stuff. It's not even about the writing, but it's that collaboration and sort of getting on the same page and talking things out, and then
Mm-hmm.
it kind of clicks. So I think, yeah. Oh, I guess I didn't quite answer how I got into writing. I think
Mm-hmm.
I lost my path. I'm not a morning person. It's not that early, but
You're good. You're
Yeah.
good.
sometimes my brain is like not quite functioning. But so I was supervising the writing on Bratz,
Mm-hmm.
and working with them, and working with story editor on the client side, and script writers, a team of script writers on that project. And I never had fancied myself a writer really, even though I've written some stuff. But that client side story editor actually hired me in a development room because she liked our collaboration on Bratz.
Oh,
And
nice.
so she gave me my first real writing job, where I was in a room with real writers, and we were developing, actually, a series of shows for a production company, and we had to come up with the Bibles, and then we got our assignments and went away, and I worked with my writing partner Joe to actually write some scripts for those shows. And unfortunately,
Mm-hmm.
those shows didn't end up getting produced, but it was like, oh wow, I'm actually a writer now. And um, you know I continue to develop ideas. I pitched a show when I was at Six Point, and we went out. We developed that show, and went out and tried to pitch it to studios, and it didn't happen. But we still love the idea, so we're
Mm-hmm.
kind of want to see that out and about. But that's kind of how, and I've been fortunate enough on a number of projects where I wasn't necessarily a writer to still be invited into the writer's room and participate in that process. So um, I'm probably, foremost a director, but I'll use the cliche. I don't like to write, but I like to have written,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
writing is hard.
I
Writing
like
is
that.
hard.
Yeah.
Writing is hard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but there's such satisfaction in being able to complete a script and have a thing that I can show people and get feedback from people and continue to develop that. So
Right.
anyway, sorry, backtracking a little bit there.
No, that's great. I'm so glad that you touched on that because I feel like writing is so nebulous and it's so hard to get into it. So it's really I think it's
Hmm.
really useful to hear like how you got into it. What was your in?
Yeah,
Especially since I think so many artists like want to write too, but like they don't know how to break into writing or like so thanks
for sure.
for talking about that. And
Of course.
this has been an amazing episode. There's so much wisdom and great like twists and turns in this story. uh,
Awesome. I had a great time. I hope I can come back again. This has really been really fun. I'm kind of just getting into the groove, so I know uh,
I
we don't
guess we'll
have all
have
day, but
to hang out again.
yeah, that would be wonderful. I feel like I gotta finish this drawing before we go.
Before we go. Well, we can like run through our like little spiel and everything, but do you have anything that you want to plug?
I think it's just Lil Kev. please take a look. The first episode is on YouTube for free, and then the rest of the series is on BET Plus. Really proud of that, of the show and the team that we were able to do. So I'd love for people to take a look at that. You can always check out my website, platypuspictureworks.com. And what else? And you can follow me on Instagram, Moosay, Moosay, Brooker, Brooker. My name's spelled out phonetically on Instagram. Yeah.
Amazing. And with that, that is the end of this creative block. Musa, thanks for being our guest and sharing your story. Keep drawing while we like run through our spiel.
Yeah, we'll run through it. I want to thank our listeners. Follow us on social media at CRTV Block, where we ask for drawing prompts. I'm going to read it slow. And questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our editor, Clemens, for editing the podcast, Marco for helping us produce the show, and Abuka for creating the short clips that we've been putting out.
And if you love our show, you can support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews. We also now clip part of the interview that lives on the Patreon only, so you can get through the best part. So come on to...
That's the part where we spill all the secrets and where we almost get our guests canceled each time. No, I'm just kidding.
I think like if Sean and I had the personality to do that, that would be crazy. I can't. I mean, anyhow, check out the Patreon to find it and to have access to our Discord community. We are right around the corner of putting together a sticker club if you love stickers from these magma boards that we're doing right now. We are going to have our patron vote on a couple of designs that they like, and we will send them to you in the mail. And we also do a little monthly show and tell. We've done that a couple of times. It wasn't super regular, but everybody is having a lot of fun sharing projects. It can be anything. So if you want to be part of our community, check out the Patreon.
Yeah, if you're tired of having to look at me draw on this thing and you want me to look at your drawings, then that's what the show and tell is.
But if you're not interested in any of these perks and you still want to support the show, great ways you can support for free: comment, subscribe, like, share with anybody who likes animation and art. Getting more eyes and ears on the pod helps us get more visibility, and hopefully one day we will, because this podcast is entirely independently produced, so help us keep making the show, everybody. I've been your host, V.
And I was Sean. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Thank you, guys.